Hello and welcome to The Power of Open, a series of programs covering Red Hat's open ecosystem, where we talk with some of Red Hat's key partners to discuss the pressing topics in the industry. I'm Guy Daniels, Director of Content at TelecomTV, and in this show we're going to look at building an OpenRAN ecosystem. Joining me today are Azhar Saeed, Senior Director, TME Technology and Strategy at Red Hat, and Martin Halstead, Senior Distinguished Technologist with the Communications Technology Group at Hewlett Packard Enterprise. Hello, both of you. Thanks so much for taking part in the program today. My first question to you is, why OpenRAN? What is the market potential here, and what are the main challenges and opportunities? Azhar, let me put that one to you first.
The big benefits that OpenRAN architecture provides is the ability to mix and match components within that particular ecosystem, from radios to different RAN vendors and a different cloud platform and hardware vendors as part of that. The advantage these things provide is now you're actually innovating based on what's happening in the industry, and you have many players who can actually provide their value add in different types of solutions. So that's why OpenRAN is very popular, and that's why OpenRAN is important for telcos, because as they start to deploy 5G, as they start to improve coverage and provide higher bandwidth to their users, they need more and more cell sites and capacity. And that capacity needs to be elastic. A cloud platform will allow them to actually have all of those.
Thanks, Azhar. And Martin, why OpenRAN, and what do you see as the market potential here?
So, as a vendor, Hewlett Packard Enterprise, we've been in telecoms virtualization space since the mid 2000s. Originally with an NFV, or network function virtualization, for the core network. So we can see really that moving to ORAN, vRAN, etc., is it's a continuation of that trend, i.e. virtualization, separation of infrastructure from software, and then creation of an associated ecosystem of vendors around that disaggregated model.
And Martin, companies are at different stages in this journey. So how will vRAN and OpenRAN enable new opportunities for early adopters, the mainstream, and also late adopters?
I think that disaggregation, as it is, creates huge opportunities beyond the major network equipment vendors. So we are seeing a plethora of new entrants into this marketplace enabled by this disaggregation. And these ISVs are creating additional value inside the radio access network, particularly by introducing tool sets driven by, for example, AI and ML, for taking the radio access network and optimizing it in new efficient ways. We're also seeing that extending as well, such that you migrate network functions that traditionally were running in the core more towards the radio access network. If you're going to create disaggregated platforms at the edge of the network that are going to do baseband processing for the radio access network, you can use those same data center environments to go and support core network functions as well, and potentially, break out, traffic at the edge, and push that into MEC or multi-access edge computing type environments as well. So this disaggregated, standardized model for introducing effectively data centers outside of the core network into the radio access network is beneficial for introducing a whole plethora of new services for the telecoms operators.
Azhar, we've heard about the benefits and the opportunities here, but what do you see as the barriers or dependencies for adoption?
Yeah, I think the biggest barrier, Guy, in terms of dependencies or for adoption of OpenRAN is the integration that's required, because you're disaggregating all of these components, hardware, accelerators, software stacks, and so on. Obviously, these all have to be brought together at the customer environment and applied to the customer environment. So integration is considered as the biggest barrier. However, there's a bright light there. That integration allows you to, first of all, pick the best of breed components and make the solution far more innovative. That's one. And two, integration can also be handled with proper blueprint and automation. So in our experience, working with our partners and with our customers, it's not that big a barrier that people make it out to be, but nevertheless, it's still a barrier.
And finally, Martin, what do you see as the role or obligation of the ecosystem to support customer success in open vRAN adoption?
So I think one of the major factors that the ecosystem need to have is adherence to open interfaces. So, building vertically integrated stacks of components that are proprietary to individual vendors is something that, the operators a while back with NFV, have tried to discourage and create these ecosystems. So, although the radio access network is relatively new in terms of virtualization, and the separation of those network functions, the network functions themselves need to be open from the perspective of adherence to open standards for communications. As those standards are evolving, it's critical that the vendor community adheres, and that applies equally for the network functions as well as the obviously for ourselves as Hewlett Packard Enterprise. We attempt to do that for the infrastructure we provide, but also for the component vendors that we have in terms of for example, FPGAs, CPUs, etc., DPUs. Making sure that the way that you communicate and manage those sets of components are all based on industry standards, so that the component sets themselves within them, the IP can exist there, but how they communicate externally is completely standardized, is absolutely critical to enable this market to function correctly.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. And Azhar, what about you? How do you see the role and responsibilities of the ecosystem?
I think the ecosystem absolutely needs to work together to really address that integration point that Martin and I spoke about in the earlier question. One of the things that we have done with HPE, for example, is create blueprints or reference architectures so that customers can actually take those reference architectures or blueprints and go apply them in their infrastructure, and it makes it a lot easier for them so that they don't have to go through the experimentation and tuning of the platform, tuning of the hardware to get the right performance that they need. Now, an open ecosystem is critical because now you just don't have a piece of hardware or a server and an operating system from Red Hat, but you have now a container platform, a hardware acceleration capability that's part of this, a RAN software stack that's sitting on top of this, and then potentially other third-party software components that are doing some monitoring, management, and so on. So all of these need to come together. So the ecosystem then becomes incredibly important to be able to work together based on those standardized interfaces that Martin just spoke about, and bring that as a holistic solution in the form of a blueprint to the customer. And then for the customer, it becomes a lot easier then to follow the guidelines as part of that blueprint and then tune it to their existing deployment environment.
Well, Azhar and Martin, thank you both very much indeed for joining us today. And to watch additional interviews in the Power of Open series, please follow the links below this video. For now though, thank you for watching and goodbye.